Kuna nini bado kuna nini video fulani ya wale wanajua Joyride podcast.
Yeah.
So kuna nini tulifanya na wao ama wao walifanya sisi tukarecord.
Yeah. Tulifanya na wao, take credit.
So hiyo tutaiekelea bedhe. Kuna tips poa za content creators hapo.
Yeah.
So watch it.
Guys, for showing up. Oh, so good to see you. So good to see you. So lovely. Karibuni sana. Thank you so much for honoring our invite. We're so happy to be here with you guys. Yes. Yes. You guys can have your seats. How are you guys feeling today? Mnafilaje mood iko aje? On a scale of 0 to 10, how happy are you? 10 being the maximum. How happy are you guys? 10, eh? Zitek is where it's at. My name is Cyco. For those who don't know me, I'm part of the Joyride podcast. I co-host the show with my wife. Isn't she beautiful? Yeah? My amazing wife, Wanjiru. I'm also a musician. And I'm super happy to be here for our first Joyride campus tour. Our first stop for the season has been Zitek University, you know? Doing my undergrad in economics and finance. And are there people who are doing economics and finance here? Good. So I had quickly figured out through the internships that I'd done throughout my 4 years that I didn't want to pursue a career in economics. So it was really the scramble and partition for finding out what do I do next. Because I don't want to pursue what I've learned, and my parents are now looking at me like, what next? You need to start applying for jobs. And at the same time, I had just discovered, I was watching a lot of content from UK and US bloggers, and I thought, it would be interesting to see how this would play out here. It was the same time blogs in terms of writing were really big. I was consuming a lot of blogs, but I'm not the best writer, and even if I am, I'm too lazy to keep writing. So the next thing that I got attracted to was video blogging, and that's how I ended up with my YouTube channel. So I did that from 2015 on and off till 2018. It didn't take time for me to make money. Within the first 3 months of publishing my first video, I already had a hair care brand that approached me to work with them. And they offered me, I think, 15,000 per video, per YouTube video, and they wanted 3 YouTube videos. So I would make 45,000 hope. That was good money back then, but for me it was more than the money, it was a proof of concept that if this thing, I really put my effort in it, that it could work. And I remember the first time I got that email and we signed the deal, the first person I showed it to was my dad. Because I was like, okay, you give me now a chance. This thing has money. And I was able to prove to myself, but as life would have it, after 3 months, life takes a dip. And the brand deals are not so consistent, I'm sure you know that. In the industry, they come, they go, they come, they go. And so for an African dad and mom telling them you want to do YouTube, but they hardly understand Facebook, so much so YouTube, I decided to get a job. And so I got a job in a voiceover company. You know those guys who do kids that ring back tones, or like, thank you for calling Wanjiru. Wanjiru is a name that means the sky. You know those ring back tones? I used to work in that company, but now I used to work in editing. So we used to edit a lot of those files. It was a bad time for me. Because you know when you know there's more to you than what you're doing, but life has dealt you a certain deck of cards and you have to take them. So I did that for maybe 3-4 months. And then I did the most millennial thing ever, and I said I'd quit. And I told my dad to give me a year, let me figure out this YouTube thing. So I pushed, but also again, doing is worth it. So I still decided to get a job. And I got a job as an operations manager. Yani nilikuwa nimehepa economics by all means possible. And by ops, I mean we used to work, it used to be a food delivery business in Kilimani. So what we used to do, we used to supply lunches to people. I was a person coordinating rice na dengu yako, coordinating with a rider. I did that for maybe 2 years. And then at this time I was still creating content, but it was really on and off, on and off. I needed the money, that's why I had to find a job. And that will feature, because even Ben had to look for a job. It's important that if you're in the industry, if it's not paying you money, you're not a failure if you choose to look for a job to support yourself. I needed money to do, because creating content requires money, you need to invest money. So I needed money to buy clothes so that I could do videos on thrift hauls, I needed to buy equipment, and my parents were not willing to spend on me because they'd already done that in uni. So I needed to figure it out myself. And so I did that job 2 years, job got closed down, and then I was back on YouTube. And God just kept on bringing me back. And then in 2018, I decided to focus completely on YouTube, and it was the same time then he's saying now we started doing content together in a peak. Brands became more consistent until now we got married and we started the Joyride. Yeah.
Wow, that's an inspiring story, yeah? You feel inspired, like you want to change the world. Yeah, thank you. So for me, I'd say, hey man, first of all, doing music is a different ballgame than doing content. Music takes time. How many people here want to be like full-time musician? Discouraged. Yani MCSK or crash this much. So music was not as forthcoming. So nakumbuka when I was still nilikuwa namkatia back in 2018, 2017, and I attacked by YouTuber. I've just been checking how this YouTube thing is doing with music. It's really struggling. I was sure about talking blog, like about not struggle pamoja. But for her, her YouTube channel started picking up quickly. For me, I'd say I started earning money from content in 2021. Previously, I was working at another place. I was working at a radio station. There was even a time we came to ZTech to activate. We came with NRG. You guys remember that time? I was working there. I was still interning with energy. But full time, I think I'd say I started earning well around 2020, 2021. Yes.
How much was it? Like,
so I was nilikuwa nimeka industry for a while. Like guys knew me. In fact, guys thought I'm doing well. You know the way unaweza go through a phase in life, you're really going like life in a chapa, but guys think you're doing really well, you know. So this chick, a friend of mine, calls me. She's like, "Hey, Nyaje, do you have number ya nani?" I'm like, so another creative in the industry. I'm like, "Hey, missing your number. But what did you want? There's a campaign we're doing here. It's for this bank, and we have a small budget. I don't think you would be interested." So nikamuuliza, "Kwani what's this small budget?" Ananiambia 250k. Hey, so nimekana wase kwanza nikatoka hapo nje so that we discuss vizuri nisifuatwe. Unajua keep checking kama una nduthi na kusikiza hapo. And from her perspective, she felt like maybe I was worth that amount of money, but me, I felt like this was a rip-off. I didn't feel like I was really worth that amount of money. What's also interesting is that it was the same time when I was trying to propose to her. So it's like, yo, no, we come do Vizuri at the right time. That was needed to do a specific thing. And just all the puzzles just added up together. So that's my first payment that I can remember that was significant. What's your first pay?
yeah, the 45,000 Kenya shillings.
So when I left the radio station, I call it quits. This was in April, I remember very well. Because after I quit, a few weeks later, COVID hit. And now all the places were shut down. Like it was such an interesting season. But I started my own podcast called the Cyco podcast. Anyone has ever heard of the Cyco podcast? Yeah, hey, yeah. So the Cyco podcast, that's when I was like, you know what, I'm very passionate about sharing about what I'm just about life in general. And I noticed that when you share about your stuff, you connect with so many people who are also going through the same thing, because you realize that as human beings, we are more or less the same and we face the same challenges. So when I did Cyco podcast, ilikuwa such a bad sound because sikuwa na equipment. I just had a small phone, so I would record my stuff there. I didn't have a team, so I would, maybe hustle cameras here and there. Sometimes I'd get a camera, you have a guest, you put it up there, you forget to press record, and you guys have been talking for 2 hours, 2 hours, Like, the best thing unaambia tu ni guest wako muende tu lunch utambuy lunch as you breathe in and out, you know. So I faced so many challenges. It was very inconsistent, just not to have the best sound. But by the time I'm coming to do Joyride, I know exactly what I want to do, and I knew why a team was important. How about for you?
I think even before I share that, I think the reason why whenever we do these tours, we like to start with our journey is to show how different journeys can be for people. When I started out, it took me only 3 months for me to be able to get a gig. But after that, it took a really bad dip, and it was on and off, on and off. For Ben, it took a very long time for him to get a well-paying gig, if I'm not wrong. But after that, his trajectory has been upward. And I think that's a true testament to even for you guys. Once you graduate, your journeys are going to be so different. Some people will leave here, get jobs immediately, and then others will take time, you will tarmac, others you need to go back to school, but you can't hate on your journey because that's what life is about. You just have to push through life with the cards that life has dealt you, and in the end, it all makes sense. Sindio?
Yep.
Yeah. So for
but
me,
let me cut you short. That story for my journey taking longer. Nakumbuka some time back, even when we were in Shago in Moranga, I just decided to ask my shosho, na huku kwetu kuna mtu ashawaimba ama akafanya kitu media, because I'm like, you know, maybe I'm trying to do something outside the generational flow. Yeah, she told me no one. So I was like, wow, no wonder I'm facing such difficult. So definitely the journeys for people are always so different and so unique.
Yeah. So for me, for the Joyride, it's been a very, very interesting journey. We started in 2022. So that was right after we got married. So you can imagine a new couple, you're living together, and then you're thrusted into working together. And that presents its own dynamic challenges. But I think the thing it has taught me is, as Ben has said or alluded to, is the importance of working with a team. When you're starting out, you probably wouldn't be afforded the luxury of having a team. Just like us, when we were starting out, you had to be your own videographer. I remember even when I was starting out, because we were dating with Ben, he was my videographer, and then I edit, and I used to use his phone because we couldn't afford equipment. But slowly those building blocks became what the Joyride is today. So it has taught me how to work within a team, because what you see right now is a combined effort, not of Ben and I, but of a complete team. And as I've said, while you're starting out, you might not have that luxury, but you cannot let that be a hindrance for you. You have to keep going, you have to keep pushing. Sometimes you have to lean on your friends. Sometimes you might find your friend is a good videographer. I started out with my friend who was a videographer. He was also learning on the job, so tukasaidiana in that sense. So for me, I think the big one has been teamwork.
Teamwork. You know, the digital space has changed so much. Kitambo, it used to be just for leisure or adults, by the way. But right now, so many careers right now are pegged on the digital space, because it's literally the future, you know. Even when you saw the president in New York, you know, when he's in New York right now, you saw he went with creators. He went with people who are in the scripting space, people who are comedians, people who are I saw musicians, actresses, you know. So you can see that the seasons and the times have shifted, you know. And now digital is accommodating everyone. It doesn't mean that for you to be a digital creator, you have to be a blogger or something like that. You can be whatever. There's so many mechanics that I see on the digital space, and they have so many clients, you know. There are even morticians in the digital space. You know, TikTok will take you everywhere. Unaweza kuwa scroll hivi, unapita chat service, then the next one unaingia ni page ya mganga. You know, like it's just a weird algorithm, you know. And so that's why we really like talking about careers in the digital space. So,
to be honest with you, the fear still happens. If I'll be honest and vulnerable with you, even before we came here, I was giving Ben a pep talk because he was so afraid, like he was nervous about coming on stage. So it's nothing that ever there is no confidence.
Like when I like Budako ni pastor, alafu anapreach to me. Now, like my pastor the other day.
No, to be fair, because even I have that fear. It's not. I'll be honest with you, it's not. It doesn't go away. Like every time you're releasing an episode, like just the other day we released a new show, and it has so many nerves because you don't know what people are going to say, how is it going to be received, will it cause your brand to go up, or it will devalue your brand. So there are all these questions that come, and even if you see people who are established, you think those ones have overcome their fear because they've already started. But the thing I've learned about fear is to feel the fear, but the most important thing is to not let it stop you from doing things. So it's not to say that even if you start, you won't be feeling that means now you've overcome. Or if you release your first video, now you've overcome the fear. The second one, the third one, the fourth one, but it's, you feel that fear, but you don't let it be a hindrance. Yeah, I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, that makes sense. Normally, family and businesses don't mix. Interesting, because most big empires are run by families, across the world. But that's a very good question. You see, for us, we were creators before we got married or before we started dating. It's like when two lawyers start dating and then they decide to start a law firm, So for us, we've gotten to a place where we are mature enough to separate work and our personal relationship. Of course, when we were starting, it was a bit 50-50, like unaweza enda event alafu maybe tumekasirishana kwa gari, so photographers hiyo day wanashanga mbona si smile, mbona si show glasses, yeah, we're like, where's you to even the Photoshop, So when we started off, we still had some sort of, we were not yet super mature, but right now we've gotten to a place where we can get to ZTech. If we have beef, we'll just store it in the car, come do a good show, and then go back. For the ones who are petty in this relationship, they always pick it back up and continue with it. But for the most part of it, we just learn to try and separate business and family. But also, you see, when it's like this, you also need to respect one another such that one of you might even get more jobs than the other. So you need to have some sort of level of maturity to separate that, because this industry, for example, is very receptive and very warm to women, especially in terms of gigs. So men you still get gigs, but not as much as the ladies.
I think I'd want to hear from the viewers, like what they find is so unique about Joyride that makes us stand out. But from our point of view, we're very big on being innovative. So you won't find us doing the same thing over and over and over again. We want to always keep our audience refreshed. That's why even like season 5, how many here have watched season 5? I'm judging the ones who haven't.
Love on the Joyride.
Yeah, I'm judging the rest of you who haven't. But that's why like even that idea of Love on the Joyride came about, because we were like, okay, now it's getting, I think we've exhausted the kind of content that we were doing. It's time to make a shift. And so in that way, you keep your audience constantly refreshed. Another thing I think, which is, it's not given enough credit, but it's so important because it gives you longevity and sustainability, is being authentic. Like who you see on the Joyride is probably who you'll see in person. And I think now that social media has become more popular, I think it's very normal to see people put on masks. Even in relationships, you see things and you're like, is that really the reality of relationships? And so I think Joyride, we try to paint the most authentic picture of what relationships can be, and in the hopes that if you watch, you'll maybe remember something that happened between you and your partner, between you and your boyfriend, ama story clear, or you even get inspired and say like, oh, when I finally get into a relationship, maybe that's something I aspire to. So we try as much as possible to be as authentic and to build those points of connection with our audience.
Yeah, authenticity is key in this game. It's very hard to put a persona. There are people who create a persona online. It's very hard to sustain, let's say for example, past 5 years. It becomes very hard. Alafu mafans who are shrewd. At first they're like, hey, they love you and all that stuff. And then at some point, maybe 5 years down the line, they're asking you, the same thing. And then it might start getting to you, it might start affecting you. But when your art reflects the person that you are as an individual, it becomes easier to grow, such that even when you grow, the art grows and it changes as well. This is in music, this is in every single thing that you do in life. By the way, let me plug our new show. It's called Love on the Joyride. This is what the show is about. We got 8 people. We got 4 guys, 4 chicks. They totally didn't know each other. And we took them through the Joyride questions from episode 1 to episode 8. Say what a date. And by episode 8, we had a couple of people who are dating. So you better check it out on YouTube. It's a reality show. It's not scripted at all. It's very interesting. You'll find very interesting character. You'll see how, like, say through the talking stages, how they backfire, how they don't backfire. So make sure you subscribe to it on YouTube. Send something, but yeah, make sure you check it out and share with your friends. Yes.
So maybe just to stretch it a bit,
Yes.
let me ask the question.
Please.
So we know you as the ones who are in front of the camera, yeah? And there are some of us who probably have the creative mind, yeah? And they love the digital space, but really being in front of the camera is not something that's big for them.
Yeah.
And well, the only behind the camera we know is probably videographers, and some of us are not the technical people.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the things that, as a creative, you can do to generate money? You know, and you're not necessarily an influencer, you're not necessarily, and you are creative, and you love the digital space.
Wow, that's a very good question. So not everyone is meant for the camera. Kuna wase tu wapendi kuwapima. Kuna wase hata IG wanaposting ka once in 2 years. How many, you know, like you have an Instagram page but you could care less. The people who are like that, it doesn't mean you're not called for the digital space. You can actually come up with a plan, curate a strategy, and get a creator to implement it, you know. But when you own your brand, in fact, you can even get to a place where you split the ownership of the brand. So you say, this creator, I'll own 25% or 50%, depending on your input, and then your work is just to do what I tell you to do. And this is very common, especially even in Hollywood, in music. In music, the people who are called A&Rs. So A&R, kazi yake inakuwa kukuambia, utaimba hii sound, utavaa nguo zinakaa hivi, utapost hivi on Instagram. So you just find that this person is just a gifted singer, like all they have is the voice. But then there's somebody else who comes and tells them, this is how you present yourself. Those people are called A&Rs. And most of them are not famous, they're not known by people. And you can be that as well. So even for creators, you know, because creators sometimes, my mind is all over, we're too emotional, we're too attached to our things. For them, they are there for the business growth, they will assess the numbers, you know. For a creator, when you do a video and it gets less views, so unaanza kufeel kama your world is over and all that stuff. For them, they have to evaluate it with the numbers and say, by the way, so feel ukipost vitu zako saa 8 ama wase wa feel hizi videos zenye unafanya saa hii, maybe we treat them like this. So that's one of the things that you can do in behind the scenes. Political instability, diseases.
I think the biggest one we face is separating when you need to be a husband and wife and when you need to be a colleague. I think that's something we're still working through, and what I mean by that is sometimes you want to rant about work, but you don't want Ben to respond as a colleague, you want him to respond as your husband. But then now being the fact that he's your colleague, he starts to respond as your colleague, and then it annoys you. So that's, and vice versa. And vice versa, it happens both ways. So I think that kind of separation has been, it's a work in progress, let me see, yeah.
So it's something I've learned about. This is for the gentlemen. I'm going to give you a free tip. Sometimes when the ladies come to vent out stuff on you, at you, it's for you to respond to the emotion, not necessarily to give them the solutions. Like akikama semestry na nia limbo, can you imagine alimwongelesha hivi? Sasa usianze kumwambia, next time this is how we handle it. No, you join me. And you say, what? Alidu hivyo? Wow, that's so wrong. How could they? You know? So this is something I've learned over time in marriage. So gentlemen, mnaweza niona hapo nje na hizo gifts. And yeah, saving relationships since 95.
Any other question? Okay.
Yeah, nice. I have 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much, Itsgiddy University, for having me.